Have you ever just stopped and thought about how much life is actually out there on our planet? I mean, from the tiniest little insect to the biggest blue whale, the sheer variety is just staggering. So how on earth do scientists even start to make sense of it all? Well, today we're going to dig into the brilliant system that humanity came up with to create one grand organized library for every living thing. So get this. Right now, we have officially named and described nearly 1.8 million species. Just let that number sink in for a second. And you know what's crazy? That's just the tip of the iceberg. That's only the fraction of life we've actually managed to find and catalog. We're discovering new ones all the time, which just goes to show you how mind-bogglingly diverse our world really is. And this really gets to the core problem, right? If a scientist in India finds a new plant, how can they even talk about it with a scientist in Brazil and be sure they're talking about the same thing? How in the world do you create one single global address book for all of life? Because before we had a system like that, it was just scientific chaos. For example, what someone in North America calls a robin is a totally different bird from what a European calls a robin. Now, imagine trying to do any serious global research on robins with that kind of basic confusion. It was pretty much impossible. And really, this is what it all boils down to. Local names, common names, they're fine for a casual chat, but for science, they're a complete recipe for disaster. You could have one species with dozens of different names depending on the language or the region. What science desperately needed was a universal language, one name that would mean the exact same organism to a researcher in Tokyo or Nairobi or Buenos Aires. No exceptions. And enter the hero of our story. An 18th century Swedish botanist named Carolus Linnaeus. He looked at all this chaos and came up with this honestly brilliant, elegantly simple, but incredibly powerful solution. A system that could give every single species its own unique, permanent scientific name. He called it binomial nomenclature. Now, that sounds super complicated, but it's actually really simple when you break it down. Bi just means two, and nomen means name. So it's literally a two-name naming system. And this simple idea, it became the absolute gold standard for biologists everywhere. It guaranteed that everyone was on the same page. The real genius of the system is in its simple, strict rules. Okay, first, all names are in Latin. Now, why Latin? Well, because it's a dead language, which means the words and their meanings won't change over time. The first name is the genus. You can think of that like a last name, and it's always capitalized. The second name is the species name. That's like a first name, and it's always lowercase. Put them together, always in italics, and you have a unique ID for that one organism. It's just so simple and so effective. All right, let's make this real with an example we all know and love, the mango. So its scientific name starts with its genus, which is Mangifera. You can kind of think of this as its broader family name. It's the group that includes all the closely related mango-like plants. But just saying Mangifera isn't specific enough. To pinpoint the exact species that we all love to eat, we have to add its unique species name, indica. And boom, you put them together and you get Mangifera indica. That is a universal name that means this exact fruit and nothing else to any scientist anywhere on the planet. Okay, so giving every single species a unique name, that's a huge first step. But we're still left with, over 1 million individual names floating around. So the next logical step has to be to start organizing them, right? To start putting them into groups based on what they have in common. And that process is called classification. And honestly, it's something you do all the time without even thinking about it. Every time we separate dogs from cats or insects from spiders, we're classifying. Science just takes that same basic idea and applies it in a much more structured and rigorous way. And that's what helps us see all the patterns connecting living things. So scientists have a word for each of these categories, no matter how big or small. It's called a taxon. So the group animals is a really, really broad taxon. Mammals is a more specific taxon inside of that. And dogs is an even more specific taxon. It's all just about different levels of detail. And this, right here, is where you see the real beauty of the whole system, its hierarchy. The best way to picture it is like a giant biological filing cabinet. You've got big drawers, and inside those drawers are smaller drawers, and inside those are even smaller ones, with each level getting more and more specific, until every single life form has its own perfect little spot. Let's walk through this hierarchy. It's kind of like a cosmic postal address, going from super broad to super specific. Kingdom is the broadest level. That's like the country. Then as you move down through phylum, class, order, and so on, each step gets more focused. It's like going from the country to the state, to the city, to the street. By the time you get down to genus and species, you're at the specific house number. And the key thing to remember is, with every step you take down, the organisms in that group share more and more characteristics. So the big question is, where do we humans fit into all of this? Well, when we apply this exact same system to ourselves, it reveals our own biological address in the great tree of life, and it shows us just how deeply connected we are to the entire living world. So check this out. We are genus Homo, in the family Hominidae, in the order Primata, and so on. Now, compare that to a common housefly. It seems completely alien to us, right? But the exact same system organizes its life just as neatly. Genus Musca, family Muscadiae, you get the picture. It's the same powerful logic, and it applies to everything that lives. You know, this whole process of classifying life led to a really powerful and frankly kind of shocking realization. As scientists started grouping things based on shared features, things like having a backbone or fur or forward-facing eyes, they were basically, without even trying, mapping out a giant family tree. This idea that we're all biologically related, not just to apes, but distantly to every single living thing, that was a truly humbling thought that totally changed how we see our place in the universe. And all of this, the naming, the rules, the hierarchy, it all falls under a bigger field of study called systematics. And the goal here isn't just to sort life into neat little boxes. The real goal is to understand the deep, evolutionary story that connects all of those boxes. It's about reconstructing the entire family tree of life on Earth. And that leaves us with a really fascinating final thought. Linnaeus built this incredible system using only what he could see with his own two eyes. But today, we have tools like genetic sequencing that let us read the actual code of life itself. We're looking deeper than ever before, which begs the question, what hidden connections, what ancient relationships, what mind-blowing parts of life's story are we about to uncover next?